Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tech Informist. My name is JJ Hammond, and we have another great show for you. Are you ready for the top tech news stories from around the world, fun and lively commentary on the technological industry, and our special guest interviews? Of course you are. Now to the main event. Up first, a mobile technological enthusiast with a strong background in medical and neuroscience, including sleep disorders and language function. Currently, he is editor-in-chief of Windows Phone Central, the largest news and review site focused to Microsoft's mobile smartphone business. Full-time curmudgeon, science geek, and play-acting anarchist, the mightiest hero, Daniel Rubino. Say hello, Daniel.
Good morning, everybody. Wow, that's quite the, I feel like WWF here. I should run into the ring.
I know. Dun, dun, dun. It's on.
Right.
So thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. But this show is not complete without my good friend, founder, editor-in-chief of STLTechTalk.com, producer of Codecast by STL Tech Talk, where we teach people how to code, co-creator of STLTechChic.com, our Women in Tech website, and the Tech Informist show, this show that you're watching right now, the uncanny Kevin Harvell. Say hello, Kevin. Don't say actually hello, Kevin. Say hey.
Oh, man, you just take all the fun out of it. Daniel, how you doing today? Thank you again for joining us.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a nice, clear Monday out today. Start of another week, so should be really good.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I love this time of the year. It's my favorite.
Yeah,
and don't forget, everyone, visit thetechinformist.com for all of our past shows, and visit STLTechTalk.com and Codecast by STL Tech Talk. And don't forget, you can interact with the show by sending us feedback to contact@thetechinformist.com. And if you're watching us live, you can ask us questions via the chat room, and we'll do our very best to answer those questions in a timely manner. Also, we want to give a special thank you to Phil Nickinson, our last guest. That was a phenomenal show, and he actually wrote about us again yesterday and said, this was fun, this was not. So what was fun? Yeah, that was us. Now let's get to the reason why we're all here, and that's to talk to Daniel. Daniel, what is your background, and how did you get involved with journalism?
Oh, yeah, and that's the funny thing. I know, so like Phil, actually, like we're pretty good friends, and him and I started around the same time with Mobile Nations. Phil's like a proper trained journalist. He comes from the newspaper business. I don't even call myself a journalist. I do have we do journalism on our site, but we also do, community outreach, working with developers, we're platform champions. Our role is actually a lot more complicated than just writing straight, journalistic stories. And so how I got involved in this was back in 2007. Dieter Bohn, who's now with The Verge, approached me. I was very active in forums, and in fact, people still know me as, I used to be known as Malatesta, and there was a lot of forums like PPC Geeks, and Sprint users and a few other. And so I had a reputation. I was just very knowledgeable and helpful. And he was starting WM Experts, Windows Mobile Experts at the time. He was looking for some writers, and he approached me and was like, hey, would you like to do this? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I actually said no. And so the first time I was actually offered a job through this, I turned him down. And that's because at the time I was in graduate school, and I enjoyed doing forum stuff as a hobby, but I'm very weary of taking something that's a hobby, that's passionate, that you enjoy doing on your side time, and sort of putting it into a job. And I was just busy, so I declined politely. But then a couple months later, he was just like, I think still looking for people. He was like, hey, and I think something changed at the time. My writing is actually, I don't consider myself a great writer, or particularly in the technical sense of like grammar and all that kind of stuff. And
I share your pain.
It's a hard thing to do. And so I was looking for practice, and at the time I was taking some writing courses in grad school, and I was like, well, this is a great way to daily force myself to practice writing. And so I took the job with him, and it was just a part-time, per article basis writing things. And it's a very, my ascent in this community and this profession has been just a very slow progression. Even becoming editor-in-chief was not something I sought to do. At that time, I was out of grad school, and I was working at Weill Cornell Medical Center in New York City. I had a really good job that I enjoyed, but things were changing in our company, and so we needed a new editor-in-chief, and there was just no one. There was a vacuum of power. There was just no one there to actually do it, and the site was sort of floundering. And I kept getting mad at that, so eventually I took it over. And for about 2 years, I did both jobs pretty much full time. And that was a lot of work, but on my other job I had some downtime, and I was able to do it. And then I just I think it was about 2012, summer 2012. I did this full time as like a full-time employee. Quit my other job and been doing that ever since. And no regrets, actually. Like I said, my worries about it becoming too, losing interest in it or being burnt out has not happened. So I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, because a lot of people think, say musicians or artists or writers or whatever the case may be is, they're like, oh yeah, I totally want to do this, and then it becomes a job, and they're like, oh bro, this isn't cool anymore. And it's like you don't want that to happen. Essentially with your side things, so that's kind of what distracts you from having to do with other mind-numbing things that you may not enjoy. And plus, when it comes to work, I mean, it's one of those things where you have deadlines. You have, you're kind of under the gun. It's not like kind of do it at your own pace type thing. It's kind of do it on, the clock. So your story is really interesting to me just because it sounds like something that would happen to me, right? Like I make all these weird decisions, and I just kind of back. I guess they call it backwards. My way into pretty much everything. Yeah. And that sounds exactly like what happened. In fact, I was telling my wife last night, I was like, he's got, these degrees, and that's what she goes, and he does what now? And I was like,
my parents love it. My parents are so great.
I was like, you know what? Now that I said that out loud, you're right. That does sound a little different of a career trajectory. That's what we'll say it like that. But let's talk. That's awesome, Kevin. Did you have any other questions about his background here or anything like that?
Yeah, because being like a political science major, and then and everything else that you're involved in with the sleep studies and all that stuff, and then getting into journalism about Windows phones. It's like, how did that really happen?
I can actually say that all that stuff I have done in the past, though, has helped tremendously, even in this job. For instance, I consider one of my strongest points is having empathy with the reader. Understanding how other people view things, not even from someone that's both from the Windows Phone fans out there, but also the people who are skeptics and not. And so being able to write to all those people is a really key thing. And something that just came with working in a hospital and working with patients. You have to have a lot of patience with the patients, and you have to understand where they are. You can't get mad at them, and so you have to sort of be on a very level thing. Grad school, which is good for technical writing and being, seeking to be objective and just being honest in the way you write stuff, but also do it in a way that's, you don't leave holes open for someone to poke through. One of the first things you learn in grad school is you read famous articles that have been published, and then your job is to find out the flaws in that study. And it trains you to, write better because you know then where to cover yourself so that people can't attack you. Because that's what academia is all about, and I've always appreciated that. And I'm pretty aggressive sometimes in comments, but a lot of it's not out of meanness. It's just out of the spirit of debate. I want to hear what people say. If they challenge me, I like to challenge them back. And and so all my past stuff has definitely helped with this. But I mean, if you ask me, I'm coming up with my 20-year high school reunion pretty soon.
Yeah, mine was a couple of weeks ago, so I feel you.
Yeah, but if you had asked me, would you want to be a blogger? It's like, no. I mean, at no point in my college careers or when I was in grad school was like what I'm doing now on my radar. Having said that, it's an awesome job. I mean, I roll out of bed and into work. The only times I travel to work is when I have to fly to Barcelona, Abu Dhabi, England,
right?
Whatever, no big deal.
Yeah, I get a lot of phones, obviously, and technology. So there's definitely a lot of perks to it, and I feel very privileged, to have this job.
And I love watching your responses, like you said. But let me go back to one thing: empathy. I believe that is a word that more people need to not only look up the definition of, but try to do. Empathy is because most people don't have empathy; they have sympathy, and there's a huge difference between the two. And that's awesome. See, that makes me fall in love with you just a little bit more if I wasn't already. And so the other thing too is when it comes to having that interaction, I like watching. I don't participate because it's one of those things, but I like watching your interactions on either Twitter or in the WPCentral forums. Just because I'm like, he didn't have to respond. Like, it's one of those like threads where like you didn't have to say anything. You could just let it go, you know.
Yeah.
But you step in, and that's really awesome. I think from multiple different levels, but more so to show that, you know, you're here. You're not just generating and then just like throwing it out in the ether and not trying to capture that and not trying to like you said, challenge their opinions, because tons of people, whether they consciously know they're trolling or not, need to be kind of educated a little bit. I mean, because the whole point is bringing to light an issue or bringing to light a story or all that kind of thing. And most recently, there was something that was a back and forth, like, how come you didn't, you know, publish this story right away? You're like, because we didn't. Yeah, because we didn't, you know, we want to do it, and I like that style. You don't just want to be the first one to market with like, you know, just like the CNN where you're just like, oh, this happened. Wait, no, we're completely wrong.
Yeah.
And you don't want to pull one of those. So that was really cool.
We used to have to be like that, right? You sort of do when you first start off. You need to make some waves.
Just pump it out.
Yeah, and you get stuff wrong, you know. But now we're at a different level where we can't just, you know, regurgitate rumors or half-truths or even things we don't fully understand ourselves, and it's a tough challenge. And in that case you brought up with the that was a developer issue on Microsoft's side, and some people were experiencing issues, and we were gauging interest in it, and we have, like, you know, our audience is our lifeblood. It's why I do interact with them so much, because without them we would be nothing. And they appreciate when I do come down there and talk to them, you know, come down there. And that's that weird metaphor, right? It's this idea that I'm somehow above them, and I'm not. I consider myself a forum writer, commenter who just has this job. And so I love coming down and, like, just interacting with them. And, you know, they feel better too, because it breaks down barriers. That's really what these tools are about, being able to get people involved in it. And sure, that developer issue was like for a handful of developers, it was very controversial, and I understood their perspective, and I actually said, you know, like, these are the reasons why we didn't write the story right away. And I'm not saying they had to agree with our reasoning, but that was our reasoning at the time. And you know, some of them still weren't happy with it, and you know, that's unfortunate. But I think they got more mad when I said I'm not backing down. Like I said, I made that call. I'm sticking with it. And you know, but that's, the more popular you get, the more risk you take sometimes, and sometimes you have, you know, some blowback. You just have to, you know, roll with it.
Well, that's where that political degree comes in handy, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Because you got to be political about it.
Yeah.
Kevin, you're up with the next question.
All right, so you've installed the Windows 10, you know, the technical preview.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that so far? Just, I mean, we all know it's early. There's going to be a lot of bugs and a lot of glitches. Tell us what devices you've installed it on and what your thoughts are on it.
Sure. So I've installed it on the Surface Pro 3, and I recently picked up a new Dell laptop, the Dell XPS 13, which I'm going to probably actually do a mini review on it, because it's a phenomenal laptop. I have the Dell XPS 15, which I gave a huge review for, and I really, really like that machine, but it's very expensive, and it's also a little bit larger. The 13, though, is just like some really awesome technology. I mean, it's so small, too.
Yeah, the perfect size. Yeah.
It's the smallest 13-inch laptop out there in terms of footprint. And so I installed it on there. And yeah, so the experience is very different. If you have a laptop or a desktop and you don't 100% rely on it, like it's your only machine, you know, I definitely recommend installing Windows 10. So on the laptop, I get it. Like, Windows 10 makes sense. And I am not a fan of the Windows 8 Sanofsky era, and so that's what drove. You know, I think the problem with Windows 8 was they went too far with it, right? And it's a weird thing to fault them with. It's like they were too advanced almost, and they tried to go too far ahead and get rid of the desktop and get rid of the start menu and this kind of thing. And plus, the tools weren't all there to actually make that transition complete. So you don't have like a full version of Office or Touch. You still have this weird dichotomy in RT devices with the desktop, and the naming was terrible. RT is still just a terrible name. So there are a lot of issues with that. Windows 10, though, this is what I can say about it. It's very fast. Lightning quick on the response times for the apps. It just feels so light and quick. It's nimble. I love the new start menu. Like I said, on a desktop and on a laptop, it just makes sense. This is how I do use my Windows, even Windows 8. I use the desktop a lot. On the Surface Pro 3, I don't recommend it. It runs, it's fine, but it's a different experience because right now what we're seeing is the first half of Windows 10, which is geared towards desktop people, PC, laptop people, IT, people who are on Windows 7 who have not jumped. It's geared for all of them. The tablet stuff, though, the consumer stuff, is not there. So eventually with my Surface, the idea is when I pull a keyboard away from it, it's going to ask me, do you want to switch to tablet mode? And it goes back to the traditional start screen with the full tile layout and everything is maximized. And then when you attach the keyboard, it'll ask you again, do you want to go back to desktop? And then you can override these, you can make them default and all this kind of stuff. That whole thing that's called Continuum, won't be out for a while. And that'll make a big difference,
Right. Yeah, because I've debated putting it on my Surface Pro 3, but I'm like, yeah, I don't think so just yet. So I tried it on a different laptop, and I don't know, it just had some glitches. I guess maybe it's a Lenovo driver kind of thing right now. So
okay, yeah.
I went ahead and just I'll start over
What?
a separate partition I might install it on.
How did you install it? Because I know, my good friend Seth, who's starting a writer on our site, did an install on an Asus machine, and he kept the ISO file mounted on a USB thumb drive, and he ran into issues, and I actually had to roll back. Where I think the recommendation is better just to keep the ISO on the C drive itself and then mount it that way. But
yeah, I used Daemon Tools.
Okay.
So I mounted it virtually, and it just basically upgraded it, and all my stuff was still there. I'm like, I always like doing clean installs. So.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah. There's a few options there. Yeah, I've heard of some people having some errors and some driver issues. But yeah, my two machines have flawless installation, just no issues whatsoever. But I think the older the hardware, you may run into some issues and some quirky stuff. But yeah, Windows 10 is the real deal. I'm very excited about it. I don't want to make predictions that's going to save them, but I think what they're doing is the right thing here, and that start menu is just a great melding of the two philosophies from Microsoft.
No, that's gorgeous. And one of the things I kind of want to go back to is something you said. I remember on the new media show, I think it was around the maybe 15-minute mark, you were talking about how the start screen and the desktop, people just weren't using it as normal. So it sounds like you've kind of changed your approach and your usability on that front. Can you speak to that a little bit? Is that just because of productivity, or just what you ran into when you were doing this stuff over the course of a year? Because that was about a year ago.
Yeah. So when it comes to desktop and laptop usage, I want to use the traditional Windows desktop view. Also for browsers, I actually use Chrome browser. Yeah, and it's not because I don't like IE.
Don't tell anyone that. No.
Right. No, the thing with IE, I love the Trident engine. I actually think it's phenomenal, and I love IE 11 Touch, the modern version. It's great on the tablets. My issue is sometimes I need plugins for parts of my job, and so I need to use Chrome for that. I wish I didn't have to, but until Microsoft changes that policy, and I get why they have their policy, because the more plugins you add and the more extensions, the slower the browser. You can have a lot of side effects. It's do you sandbox it or not? It's a tough performance issue. But so I get the desktop usage. Even on I'm speaking right now about XPS 27 from Dell. And it's a touch screen, but I really use the touch screen part with the giant live tiles. It's cool to see them flipping and see all my information coming up. But I'm really on that screen for an extended duration, and so I don't mind it. And with the keyboard shortcuts, it's fine for me. But for obviously other people, it was very jarring. And what they did with it, 10 at least, and how they're, like I said, blending those two things. I think it's the way it should have progressed, of course, originally. And so Microsoft's in a tough position. They look like they're backtracking, but I think they're also using informed knowledge from things they've learned and to make it better. I don't know if they could have done what they're doing in 10 today when 8 first came out. Some of that they could have, but I think a lot of the decisions they're making now is based on informed usage. I also love, you know
Right.
what's great, is the feedback program in Windows 10.
I love that. You know,
Yeah.
it almost feels like so. Another thing I was wanting to say was the Sinofsky era. I'm glad that all of them they're gone because
Yeah.
it felt as though they're like, you know, we're just gonna do this and blah blah. Well, and everybody
Mhm.
knows the story, so I'm not gonna go into it. But it does feel like there's a new culture there. There's a
Yeah.
new understanding of this is how we're gonna do things. Aside from the fact that the whole develop thing, and we can talk about that later. But no,
Mhm.
the whole feedback thing, and you know what? Let's listen to these guys. And I gotta say, not conspiracy wise, but if you're going to come out with a product and make everyone hate it and then show the exact opposite of the spectrum, because I think the 10, seeing multiple different desktops, having different
Sure.
windows, and you know, it was really humbling to see Joe Belfiore and Terry Myerson talking about, yeah, we know this isn't new or whatever, like Linux had, you know, you were able to do like the 4 screens or whatever,
Sure.
but they were very, very humbled and like, here's how, and here's what we believe is the next stage, and here's how we're approaching this idea. And I can't stand when commenters are like, and I think they just do this for clicks or whatever, is when they're just like, oh, they're backtracking or they don't know how to do the next version of Windows, so now they're asking us how to do it. We shouldn't do the
Right.
for them. And I'm like, really? Really? Is that how you're going to be about this? They can't win, you know,
Yeah.
when it comes to the press sometimes. I mean, not with us. I mean, we have our own Windows
Right.
phone meetup group, and we're kind of, you know, fans and all that kind of jazz.
Right.
But the overall point was it was humbling to see, and it's awesome to see that feedback, right? Like our stuff matters. Like in Office, I'm a part of that smiley face, sad face thing that they have. So like I
Right.
report back to them what I do and I don't like. That's awesome. You know, that
Yeah.
means I'm contributing. I'm saying, look, I legitimately don't like when the window pops up in small screen or whatever, you know, and
Right.
they get to know that stuff, and they get to use
Yeah.
that feedback to make their stuff better, and that's what I think is amazing. And speaking of that, you were at the Microsoft event recently. Were you surprised at how during the event Microsoft came out basically saying that they kind of messed up with Windows 8 and 8.1?
No, you know, you use that word humble, and that's the key word. You know, I've spoken a lot I was out in Redmond a couple of months ago. Had some meetings with people. A lot of the stuff is off the record. You know, we're just chatting and stuff like that. And you know, you talked about this, the Sinofsky era, and the atmosphere is so different at Microsoft now. I can just tell you that different teams, like the Windows Phone team and the Windows guys now, they're talking. They work together. They overlap their projects. It's so, and for those who don't know, under Sinofsky, it was a very colonized system where you had your departments, and he closed it off. What he was doing, no one else knew what they were doing, and so there's no collaboration. And Sinofsky cut everybody off, including media and third-party companies. And I think they were trying to do the Apple model, like, you know, he's going to lead this, and that's a risk, because if you have the chops and you can nail it, it works. But if you don't, it ruins things. And,
Right.
and there were a lot of people just not happy with that mentality. Now, if you bring up that time, they're all like, "Oh my God!" Whew. I mean, they are literally completely happy that
It's crazy.
yeah, that everything's changed, that they're working together. They all feel like they have a common goal now,
Right.
and they're definitely much happier and driven. The feedback stuff, I think, is good. I mean, yeah, you walk this fine line. Like, do you dictate everything
Right.
and just hope it works, or do you do a little bit both? Like, they are dictating some things. I mean, the start menu is their thing. They didn't ask you to design that.
Right.
But I do enjoy how when I'm using it, it goes, hey, what do you think of the start menu? Last night I was trying to use a Miracast. It was like, how was your Miracast experience? And you click the little notification, and then you can just rate it and type it and send it to them.
That's
And
gorgeous.
Yeah, and that's just smart. Like, I don't have a problem with companies, you know, doing that. So, yeah, you know, Microsoft's a very humble organization right now. They're very fixed on making customers happy and working with them and breaking down barriers. It's the reason why we know Joe Belfiore. I mean, how many of us knew Sinofsky really before he announced all this stuff on stage? You know, everything was very much behind the scenes. When I started in 2007, I didn't know anyone on the Windows Phone team. I didn't really know anyone at Microsoft. Today, they reach out to you. They want to participate. That's a conscious decision by the company to break down these barriers, and they want to do more. I know some of their plans for doing this with customers and breaking things down. what they have to worry about, of course, is some legal issues and PR stuff. Because when you have employees out there saying things,
right.
You have to be careful. Are they speaking on behalf of Microsoft or themselves, and where's that line get drawn? Because they can't say something, and then does a company commit to it? So it's a tough legalese thing that they have to deal with, but they're looking into doing that. I just find it fascinating.
Yeah, it is phenomenal, and even from the top down, because we have a local store here, the Microsoft store here in St. Louis, and they embrace us. They think I have a cot in the back room, but I like I'm an employee. But it's amazing, and you feel this certain sense of that everybody's on the same team. Where like you said in the past, it was just kind of like, well, your department's smaller than mine, and it wasn't this certain sense like, man, hey, we got to get on this, like we're talking this up and we're doing all these events and. We talk about Youth Spark and BizSpark and Dream Spark and all these different programs for coders and getting people excited about the platform and coding for it and all of that, which kind of leads me into my next question. How do you feel about this one Windows movement towards one set of code across multiple platforms and devices? Me being a programmer myself, working on universal apps. In fact, we're going to be teaching that here in the next month or so. So it's going to be one of those things. And so tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so this goes back to, I think 2010 was when Ballmer first said the phrase 3 screens in the cloud. And, so this merging of stuff has been in the cards for a long time. And it's not a trivial task. I think it was Digital Trends wrote an article recently, and it got a lot of stuff wrong. It was talking about how Microsoft kept resetting Windows Phone, and they need to stop doing that. And it fundamentally misunderstood the reasons why they did that. So, going back to Windows Phone 7, which was itself a reboot of Windows Mobile, like they had to kind of do that. Windows Mobile as a UI was just not...
Oh, it was awful.
Yeah, it was just not where smartphones were going. So they had, and they could have, right? There was actually 2 paths. They had Photon, and then they had the Windows Phone 7 stuff. And they could have taken the easy route. They said, no, we're going to scrap everything and start over. It was a tough decision for them to make, but they kind of had to do it because they were just meandering off the wrong path. Once you're on Windows Phone 7, though, you're talking about the CE kernel. CE has been around forever. And it's great. It worked well. It was fast, but it was very limited for developers. There was just so much that they could do with it to tie into the telephony, the hardware, and all the different APIs. And
Silverlight's, it's the 8th, 9th wonder of the world, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's what it was running for. And I remember coding to that and going, yeah, this isn't going to be around another year and a half.
Yeah. And so they had to, so they moved to the NT kernel, which is what Windows Phone 8 was. So then they had to reboot again. Why didn't they just go to that the first time? Well, simple. They had to port that kernel over. That's not something you just do overnight. And in the time frame they had, they just couldn't do that. These are big underlying projects. I tell people it's sort of like, and it's the same issue with Skype. It's like buying a house and then going, okay, I want to rip out and redo the plumbing.
Right.
You can do it.
Skype was never meant to do what people wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why they're going back now and making it mobile and doing all the things. So, but that's the technicality that they have to do here is like they have to pull out all that stuff while maintaining the structure.
Right.
But the thing is, when you're a consumer and you go to Windows Phone 8 versus Windows Phone 7, it basically looks the same. The UI is 90% the same. They modified things, they tweaked it a little bit, but it's the same system. You can run the same apps. If you're on Windows Phone 8, you can run Windows Phone 7 apps. There was no discontinuity there for users. So as a consumer, you don't really know the differences. And now because they went to the NT kernel, once again, it was a conscious decision. Not only can they do more, but the idea was now they're on the same page as Windows Desktop, and now the Xbox One has an NT kernel, and it's one of their 3 operating systems in there.
Right.
Yeah, and so all this stuff was meant to move so that they can get on the line everything up. But then they also had to do the development layer for developers. Write the store as a single store, write the coding tool so that you can code once and spit it out to a different phone and desktop. And that's not even complete, right? You can do about 80-90% code now with the Windows Phone 8.1 stuff and overlap with the Universal app, but they want to hit 100% with that. So what they want to do is be able to code, spit it out, and then on their back end, they'll format it for different screens, and the developer doesn't need to worry about that.
Yeah, and that makes it easy because like that doesn't mean I have to just bounce back and forth between my shared libraries, like if I'm creating a project and all that kind of stuff. And what that means to the consumer is that you could essentially pick up, the phone and the application, and the hardware communicates with each other to tell you what is it running on. This is how it's going to look while it's running on this system, and it's going to be more optimized for that. And I think that's I think it's a wonderful idea and the right approach. They took a little while, and I'm using air quotes there, to come to market with this. But man, I mean, we're talking about security concerns. We're talking about stable applications. We're talking about communication across devices, having multiple different OEMs, having to speak to different chipsets, different RAM specs, and all those sorts of things.
And then you also have management styles, right? The management styles under Ballmer and Sanofsky are very different from what they're doing today. There's that famous diagram of what it's like to work in Microsoft, and it's just all the departments and they all have the guns pointing at each other.
Right.
And that was the idea of Microsoft. That and for those who don't understand what that reference is the fact that all these departments worked on their own projects, but they were always fighting for resources against their other employees on their projects, and so it was projects versus projects. So there was no, it was like having an army all fighting to be the top, but the company, there's no one leading the whole vision, and now they've done away with that, and I think it's a smart decision. But long term, this like one app, code everywhere kind of thing is so powerful because Apple doesn't really have this. Apple still maintains this distinction between OS X and iOS. Android doesn't really have this. They have their Chrome OS and Android, which still are technically different things.
Yes.
And they're bringing it closer together, but their roadmap and their vision for both companies is not as clear as what Microsoft is doing. It remains to be seen, if what Microsoft is doing is going to win, but this app gap problem we supposedly have on Windows Phone is one of those things that can be addressed, because if developers are like, I'm not going to target Windows Phone, it's 4% market share in the United States, why bother? But if you can code for Windows 10 and get your Windows Phone app for free, why not, right? It solves that problem.
Absolutely, and then it brings on and I still think these .NET conferences, or these conferences where people have been building an ASP and C#. I think there is eventually, hopefully, let's just say that. I'm not going to say that there for sure is, but eventually my hope is that they recognize that and they're like, oh man, we can target all these and have our enterprise apps. Like there's several different big businesses that write an Xcode and all this other kind of stuff. What if you could repurpose your C# developers and your desktop app developers to do these modern apps or these universal apps to run on all these different things, so that they can give their employees one device instead of multiple different devices, and be able to securely do all these different things. I mean, that is the hope, right? And then when you throw that in there with desktop, tablet, phone, gaming system, you can have educational like e-learning platforms that go to speak to all that. You can have all that kind of stuff, and that's what's really exciting. So Kevin, you're up with the next question.
Yeah, so let's move on over and talk a little bit about Windows Phone. What would you like to see next with Windows Phone? I mean, it's coming a long way from Windows Phone 8 to this new 8.1 with Cyan and all that. What would you like to see next out of Windows Phone?
My hope for specifically Windows 10, which is the next major version, because Windows 10 is going to run on Windows Phone too, which is so bizarre to think, but that is their goal, right? And of course they even have to word that properly, because if I tell people Windows 10 is running on the phone, the first thing they're going to be like is, I don't want a desktop on my phone, because that's and that's still the perception. Even when you tell people Windows Phone, they're like, oh, I want a file explorer and all this kind of stuff.
That's very true.
And so they have to fight back about that. But yeah, the idea with Windows 10 on phone, what I hope is the apps, everything talk to each other. I want to be, if I'm at my PC, I want my PC, if I get a text message, I'd like the text message to pop up on my PC, and then I can respond to it through my PC. It goes through my phone, and vice versa. I like my apps being synced and talking to each other. Tweetium is a great Twitter app out there right now, and it represents this. If you haven't tried it, definitely go try it, because it's a true universal app. It runs on Windows, modern app, and also runs on phone, and it just dynamically adjusts. He
Oh,
updates
it's
one.
gorgeous.
Yeah, and when he updates the code, it updates for both, and it's really fascinating to see. And so I think some people are sort of missing this, that like the idea that these apps can sync and talk to each other. It's just, and knowing that when you see like the new RT apps running on phone, the performance difference is night and day, and that's an issue right now we're dealing with. And I don't think people necessarily get it. On Windows Phone 8.1, if you're running Windows Phone 8 apps, they run fine, but it's not as good as running an RT app, which is optimized for 8.1. I'm talking scrolling performance behavior. Even the way the fonts look much better. So I hope to see more of that. These universal apps. I want to see apps written in 8.1, and just going forward, I want to see Skype rewritten like that. Because once you start using these apps, you're just like, oh, this is like lightning fast. Everything is speedy and fluid, and that right now is not there because a lot of us aren't on 8.1, and so these companies don't want to be like, here's an 8.1 only app, and then everybody else can't get it. Yeah, that'll change in the next few months. They also have to fix the camera stuff, which is a weird thing to say. Well, the Lumia cameras are super powerful, and for someone like myself, who's I would consider myself a prosumer photographer. I have a full frame D700. I've been shooting for years. I own a lot of prime lenses. I know how cameras work. And the Lumia is, especially the peer view stuff, it's amazing. I can do stuff on the 1020 that you can't do on any phone. But when it comes to normal everyday photography, they're not as good as the iPhone 6. And a lot of people may be surprised at myself saying this, but the iPhone 6 has a phenomenal camera on it. Even the 5S had a phenomenal camera. I'm talking about speed and being able to switch things, square, panorama, adding live filters, the stuff that people actually use every single day without much thought. They don't have that basic experience down yet. They have the pro stuff down, which is neat, but they need the speed of that to compete, I think, with some of the other companies.
So you think that's more of like an optimization issue, just some software coding, or?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. HTC was good with their image chip, right? So the HTC, this goes actually back to the Titan 2, was the first smartphone from HTC.
Heard that so long.
Yeah, that's a great phone.
Yeah.
That was 2012. Had a 16 megapixel camera at the time, and
that's insane.
And it had a Qualcomm chipset, but they also had their HTC's custom thing called an image chip on there. And the image chip is there it's just like a videograph, a GPU. It's just meant for the camera. It helps rendering and processing of the image. Nokia phones currently do not have that. Even on the 1020, they did some weird back-end stuff with Qualcomm, but I think they should get a dedicated chip to help with the camera processing and offloading, and the hardware is there for that. I think they really need to sort of implement that. I think with iPhone, especially the iPhone 6, I actually don't like the operating system. I find it boring, and I find it static. But the hardware itself and how it interacts with everything is phenomenal. You got to really give them credit just how much stuff they've jammed into that thin device. And I know they catch, every time a new one comes out, there's a new gate. But the fact is, the phone is like amazing hardware.
Yeah.
But having said that, Microsoft now owns the mobile division of Nokia.
Right.
And in my conversations with them, they talk about the Surface experience on phone. And I have to be careful when I say that, because that doesn't mean there's a Surface phone, which is immediately what everybody goes for. It's like, oh my God, they're going to do a Surface phone. No, but the model of what the Surface is what they're going to do with phone. And the Surface, whether or not you like it or you think there's a role for it, it's phenomenal.
Using it right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's gorgeous. I mean, it's built so well. The glass, everything about it is just completely well tuned. It feels like something Apple would have made. That sort of model, what they're doing with the Surface and customization of the hardware internally to meld better with the OS, is something Microsoft has never been able to do in mobile. And
that's true.
This is what they're going to do with their new flagship phones, which won't be out till spring, but it seems to take 9 months to from paper to market. And I have a lot of hopes that we're going to see even at 1020. Fun fact is, the Nokia teams and the Microsoft teams talking that much about the 1020's camera. Like there were people on the Microsoft Windows Phone developer stuff who did not know there was this 41 megapixel thing working.
That's
yeah,
that is not surprising at all.
It's just companies have to maintain walls between them, and they don't just share everything. So it's not like Elop was hanging out with Ballmer and like, and here's everything we're doing, and we need you guys to do this and this and on it, and the guys were coding, and that's why the 1020 experience feels sort of only halfway there.
Yeah.
But that's going to change now with what's going on with the companies now. And now there's no secrets. They can work the hardware and software absolutely together and co-develop that stuff. Microsoft has never done that for phone. And what that results in, I think, is going to be really fascinating. And I have a lot of hopes for it. Doesn't mean they're going to get it, but you look at Palm Trios, you look at BlackBerries, you look at iPhones. It's one reason why when I say that, it brings a bell in people's head. Like, oh my God, I loved my Trio 700 or, my Trio 650. I loved my BlackBerry Q9. That legacy, that melding hardware and software is really the key there. And so, we'll have to see.
Yeah. And I think writing straight to the machine, like you said, I mean, Apple, I want to say it's the Metal is what they called it or something like that. It's where they write directly and they kind of skip over some to make it run faster. So that was pretty amazing. And I think more of that optimization, like you said, is going to. I'm rocking the 1520, and this thing's blazing fast anyways. But I mean, I recognize that there are other phones that aren't blazing fast like that just because of the specifications, but like you said, that they definitely need to do that. Now, recently you did take an awesome side by side of a Rise Against, which I played for you when you hopped on the thing, which I because I'm like that, but you did that and you showed the difference between the two, and that was pretty amazing. And you talked about how there are still huge benefits, and I agree with you. I hope that transfers over. I hope that transfers over to the new. Hope that all of those things still stay beautiful in the way they are and just get better. Speaking to that point and all that, I really hope to see not necessarily a quote-unquote Surface phone, but we do definitely see this, like you said, a more crafted, a more concise new device. And we on the Windows side, yes, we are a patient group, and I don't think we do that on purpose. I think there's a little bit of masochism that goes on there, but whatever. Sure. So spring, that sounds like an eternity. But if you're patient and you do it right, instead of come out like the Sanofi Windows 8 thing that we were talking about earlier, I think like I said, if it's done right, it's going to be gorgeous. It's just going to be a wonderful thing.
They're a very cautious company right now, and there's two examples you can just point to that. They canceled the Surface Mini, and then they canceled McLaren. McLaren was their top secret flagship phone. It was supposed to be out by now, or just about to come out. It was supposed to be announced probably in Berlin, would have been the plan for it. The McLaren was going to be this system that had a 3D touch interface. You can hold your finger over the tiles, and then the tile is going to explode into mini tiles. So instead of just having a tile that flipped into like two sides, that tile could explode into, I think it was 8 different smaller tiles, and each one of those could have shown some information, something developers could have programmed. So if you did it over Facebook, it could have showed you your last message, could have shown updates from people, and this kind of thing. And this was I want
that. That sounds so awesome.
It does, and so the question is, though, is it truly useful or is it gimmicky? And that's the first thing I think people immediately think. It's like, okay, but it's like hovering over my phone and not touching it, something I really will do. And from what at least I understand, they gave some developers early access to the stuff to see what they could do with it. And I guess they weren't that impressed with what came out of it.
Right.
And, they made a tough decision. This thing was, in development for a long time. I've heard of sightings back in December of last year of it already, and it was back then it was called Goldfinger.
Right.
And this is just a couple months before they had the hardware already. I heard it was developing devices getting ready to go out, and they canned it.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of. That's not an easy decision, because then people go okay, well, what's their backup flagship phone? They had another one that they were working on, and just in case. They don't have a backup flagship phone.
That's not good.
Well, yeah, you cancel that, and I can tell you, T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon were all supposed to get it. I talked to a T-Mobile person recently, and they would never acknowledge McLaren being canceled, but they said we did have a big hole in our lineup for default for a flagship phone. That's why you see the HTC One M8 now being positioned as that flagship device, and it's getting a lot of support from Microsoft. That is their plan B, but they can't just whip out a new phone, especially with the company being in transition. And so I don't know what the future of a Clarion is. When I say it was canceled, that specific model, that specific iteration of it was canceled. The technology behind it, the 3D touch gesture stuff.
They still have it.
They still have it. It's still being developed. It's being refined. And I think you can also throw in Kinect into this, right? Yeah. Kinect is a big risk for them. They took it. They put it on Xbox 360. It got pretty good reviews. The second one for Xbox One took it much further, but then they bundled it together, and it seems in hindsight now that didn't work for a couple of reasons. The price was too high, and also the actual usage of Kinect for the Xbox experience has not lived up to the hype.
And it's kind of a niche market. I mean, it's not for the masses as one would think.
Yeah, I mean, there are very few games out there that you're like, oh my God, you got to have this Kinect experience on there. It's ridiculous. That has not happened, and that's a fault of the developers. It's the fault of Microsoft. There's a lot of blame to go around. But when you look at how that technology has not caught on, and taking that same sort of technology and putting it into a phone, which is kind of what they were doing. This was all proprietary technology, and it wasn't cameras like the Amazon phone. And then that's another example. Look at the Amazon phone with its 3D thing. That was supposed to be huge, and I think it's tanking. So
not good.
It's a message people don't want to necessarily hear. That because this is the problem when you say Surface phone, you say 3D touch. I don't give you the details. You fill them in your head, and in your head you come up with this amazing device that just does everything you want. But the reality and experience, what actually was, is not something we're privy to, and that's a dangerous thing. So.
Yeah, and let's speak to this really quick. One thing we haven't talked about, which was Cortana. I like gimmicks. I don't care. People can hate me for that all they want to, but I like my interactions with my devices. That's why I like Windows, because of the live tiles and the way they flip and they turn, and all of that stuff could be quote unquote gimmicky, but to me it's a way that I like to interact with my devices. And one thing that I always do, and I'm one of those people in public who are talking to my phone in Cortana. But last night, I think I tweeted this out to you guys last night because this was on your now, because of my indecisiveness, which I'm known for. I can flip coins and roll the dice on Cortana. That seems gimmicky, but it's a way in which I can interact with my phone that's unique to me, that I enjoy, that I see more people being able to enjoy those experiences. Because if not, they're just reading emails, or they're just work devices or whatever. We got to make these things more attractive overall, and make the experience better in order to be either unique or all that other kind of stuff. Because you spoke earlier to the iPhone and how it's been tweaked and customized for the user experience, and it's light and it's thin and all these kind of different things, and the interface, with the parallax effects. I mean, a lot of people kind of maybe shut that off or whatever, but I mean, it's still kind of a pretty thing, and they're very strict in their guidelines. But speaking to this and Cortana, I'm wearing a Cortana shirt. I love this thing. It's gorgeous. And I really think that Cortana and Windows 10, because I'm not going to tell you to confirm that because I already know it's there. Because why wouldn't it be there? It'd just be stupid. Right. But that is going to be wonderful, because if you can have those, and we didn't even talk about how MSN, the MSN apps that were rebranded, and the MSN.com, that's my new landing page, because it has my used to be Bing app, so health and fitness, my stocks that I'm tracking, my news that I like to follow, all of those kinds of things. So now it's tracked across everything. And we also didn't talk about how if you're in Outlook.com, if you're using that, you can actually see your Facebook messages in there, and you can communicate across your devices that way. So I see that future, and I see that as just an awesome way to sync all these devices and all that. So speaking of Cortana, are you super stoked about it? How do you feel about it? Go.
Yeah, no, Cortana is, I think, surprised a lot of people. I use an iPhone 6, not necessarily out of like because I love it, but I have like 3 or 4 phone accounts, so I'm always carrying around these phones and comparing and contrasting. And Siri is just not that impressive. Siri really is the tell me experience that Microsoft has had for years, where you just
That's awful.
yeah, I mean, like, perfect example. The other night, we're sitting on my friend's couch. We're like, hey, let's order some food. And so there's a great restaurant nearby me called Linguini's. And so I just, in Cortana, I can go Linguini's, Marlborough, Mass. And then it does a search and brings all the results. And it was right there, Linguini's. It had the map, the phone number. I can hit it, get more information, the hours. All of that was right there.
Right.
I type, I say, Siri, I just go Linguini's, Marlborough, Mass, and it goes, I found it, and then just shows me Marlborough, Mass, and just a map. And
Not what I asked.
and it was so enthusiastic about giving me the wrong answer.
I know.
It was just like, but Cortana is a lot smarter, and
Yeah.
the sort of information you can just ask it, and yeah, Cortana is a big deal. I think it goes to Windows 10 when it goes to, how can it not go to Xbox, right? How can they not replace the voice system in there with Cortana as a search engine? So, the potential there for all this, and don't forget, the more places they put Cortana, the smarter it becomes, the more information they can pull in, the more they can.
I'm totally okay with it being multi-platform, because that's just more information and the better experience I get. I mean, I know that was a big thing. How dare you, put Cortana and other things like that. And at first, my knee-jerk reaction was a little bit of that. Like, we need something to bring people over to the Windows Phone platform. But honestly, you're going to come over. Either you're going to come over or you're not. You have to have compelling features, but you have to make those features awesome. And if it lags even a little bit, people are going to go back to what they're used to. And you're already asking people to jump ship from maybe an Android, or maybe they have a PC that's a laptop and they have an Android phone, or maybe they have a PC that's a laptop and they have an iPhone, or they have a Mac and an Android, whatever. You're asking people to change their way of doing things, and if you can provide the same kind of services across platforms like that, I get that. That makes sense to me. You want to make those seamless experiences to move over to the ecosystem because of the ecosystem wars. You want to capture them, get them in, and if you're having an awesome experience on Cortana, you're like, man, this could be even better on Windows Phone or other Windows platforms. Then boom, I'm sold.
It's all about bootstrapping, getting people, if you can get, say Windows 10 comes out, and it's actually a pretty big success as far as conversion of Windows, Windows 7 people and the people who have been reluctant to do the, upgrade. When they start seeing the Start Tiles stuff, when they start seeing the Cortana stuff, and then next time they see that commercial and they see the phone has that same experience on it, conceptually, the idea is that light will go off and be like, oh, that could be actually kind of neat. I like that. I want that there.
Yeah.
That was supposed to happen with Windows 8 with Windows Phone. The problem with Windows 8 was the poor adoption rates.
Right.
And it didn't convince people to do that. So there's still that idea of like, the shared experiences and all that, and carrying them over across the different services. And it's a very powerful system they're building, but it's a complicated system, and it's taken a long time. And it remains to be seen if it's going to work the long term. But what's neat about it is, one, it's unique. It's their own vision. It's their own take on things. They're not doing what Android is doing. They're not doing what Apple is doing. They're going their own path. It's a brave path. Who knows if the path will work? But at least it's doing something different in the technology industry. And I have respect for that. So.
Yeah, I know. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Kevin, you're up with our last question for this awesome guest.
All right, so let's wrap things up. Back to WPCentral talk. What is coming up? I know recently you guys put out a poll looking for to choose between 2 names.
Sure.
Rebranding. What's going on with that, and what can people expect in the future from WPCentral?
Sure. This has been something we've been talking about at least for a year now internally, although I've brought it up a few times in comments and when people have asked. So we started doing Windows Phone news, and we're the top in that domain right now. I mean, it's not even close. And I don't mean to slight the other sites out there, like the Windows Phone Daily and stuff like that, because they're all run by really good people, and they're mostly fans of the operating system. They do great stuff, but we're on like a different level, both for production and financing and being able to pay for work. And so, we are the top in that area right now. And what we found too is when we'd like do a story on Surface or do a story on Xbox, we would gauge audience interest. If we did a story on Surface and had like 0 comments on it, we wouldn't do another Surface story. If I saw the traffic and just did nothing. Same with Xbox. But what we found was, and it makes sense, if you have Windows Phone, like I said, if you have Windows 8, you don't necessarily have Windows Phone. If you have Windows Phone, there's a good chance you have Windows 8. There's a good chance you have Surface. And that has resonated with our audience. So we've been slowly increasing it. We hadn't announced a renaming of the site because it was too early. We didn't want to be like, oh, we're going to cover all things Microsoft, including Windows and Xbox and Surface, when we couldn't match the same output we were doing with Windows Phone and the quality of work there.
Makes sense.
Because then people are going to be like, oh, you're not really doing well there. So it's been a slow ramp-up process, seeing how the community reacts. We didn't want to just throw all this, Microsoft or Windows stuff at them, especially if they're coming here just for Windows Phone news. So we've been slowly building it up, and now it's working, right? People are really happy with it. So yeah, we're going to rebrand. We did a poll recently with Windows 1 and was as a potential name. There's also another one, Windows United. And that wasn't the only 2 choices. There's a couple other people want us to just call WinCentral or Windows Central. And these are all things we're considering. Some of it has to do with domains. Do we own a domain? Sure. Some of it has to do with, do we put Windows in our title and URL? How does Microsoft feel about that? Yeah, because these are trademark things, and as I can tell you, as a company, their policy is basically they shrug their shoulders because they can't say, "Go ahead, use Windows in your title," because that's them forfeiting the trademark.
Right. But and then maybe a year or so, they're like, "Oh yeah, it's time to like the mob, right?" You're like, "Hold on, wait, what?"
Yeah. But there are plenty of sites out there who use Windows, Microsoft in their titles are still not getting legal issues. So it's a complicated thing. There's also, if you change your URL, you lose potentially a lot of traffic, at first, and so there's a lot of things to consider. So we're not rushing into it, but something that'll probably happen within the next, I like to say, 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. We're going to be coming up with something, the idea though is, because what is now known as Windows Phone, as we now know in 2015, is not going to be Windows Phone. It's just Windows. So it feels dated to be like, oh, Windows Phone Central, when you're clearly talking also about the Windows experience and Xbox Surface, and all that Surface. It's all the same thing. So we definitely want to do that, and we'll be there. We're right now, like, we do 4.1 million uniques a month, and something around 15 million page views. We're like one of the top, I think, 1,200 sites in the United States. There isn't a Microsoft-focused site that we don't beat in terms of traffic. And that's just with us kind of trying. Like, we haven't even rebranded ourselves yet.
Well, I check you guys like 4 or 5 times a day, but
Yeah, thanks.
So that's me. That's all. No, I'm just kidding.
It's all about finding the right people. This isn't me, right? This is just it's hiring the right people around you who have talent and offer skills. We hired Mark Wim from Nokia blog. He was doing video stuff forever, and I would run into him in conferences and stuff, and I was always like, man, you do awesome work. And then when Nokia got bought and they were going to change their name, he's like, oh, I'm kind of screwed here. So he just like, so we had just come back from Abu Dhabi, and he was just like, he sent me an email. He's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. He's like, are you guys hiring? I was just like, done, hired. Like, 'cause his work is phenomenal. Like, he does great video. And so we brought him on.
Same here. When I come across somebody, I'm like, nope, no, you're mine. No, there's no negotiation here. You're mine. It's just one of those things, when you find those good people, and you guys really, you got really good writers. You produce really good content. So I'm just going to say this real quickly. From the entire Windows Phone meetup group that's here, we all thank you for your work, and we talk about you guys a lot. So we really appreciate the dedication.
We can, like I said, you guys are our lifeblood. It's the community. It's all the commenters, all the people who tip us. It's crazy. It's we need to thank them, and for all the success we're having, we can do much better, right? My job as editor is I'm always grouchy.
I don't know how you see it. Maybe, Kevin, is that why you're always upset and grouchy? No,
maybe it is. Maybe that is what it's all about.
Yeah, maybe you just needed to hear it from Daniel.
Yeah, if you're satisfied, you're going to lose, right? Someone's going to come in there and be like, do it better than you. So there's like 10 things I know we can do better, including getting our own podcast back. I know I'm going to catch flack, rightly so, that our podcast is, got on the sidelines, which is fair, but these are things that we're all working on. So.
Yeah, well, to Jay and everybody, awesome job, and everybody with the application and with the unique experiences. We like the iterations on those. Those have also been awesome. Just everything you guys are doing. You as a human being are cool because I've been watching you for a long time, and thank you so much for coming on our show. I know it means a lot to me and Kevin as fans. And you as a promoter of everything that you do with Windows, and you go and you talk and you write, and the editorial process that you have, I respect that. So I just wanted to say that for whatever that's worth. And the site and everything, we're so looking forward to what's coming down the pipe for you guys, and the new vision, right? And sure. I still think that I'll refer back to the phone as Windows Phone a little bit, just because sure. If you just say like Windows device, they're gonna that doesn't really roll off the tongue very well.
It'll be Windows Phone, but small p.
Yeah, small p. Right, small p. So yeah, it's gorgeous and it's gonna be cool. And I also saw Paul. I always jack up his last name, but he put out the thing. No. For your guys.
Paul. Yeah. Paul.
He was talking about how the Xbox coverage is going to be a little bit more heavy, and what that's going to look like, and all those kinds of things. Like, why not do those things? And the Twitch live stream. So if you guys listening, you can watch these guys on Twitch live stream. You can watch them on all these other different things. I know you're jonesing for the podcast, but you still can catch these guys and doing different stuff and out there because they're doing their thing. So again, thank you so much. People can find you at Daniel_Rubino on Twitter. That's where it seems like you're most active, and also hit you up on WPCentral.com. So Kevin, any final words?
No, just thank you for your time today. I know we've kind of had you a little bit longer than we originally
started. No worries. Yeah.
We appreciate it and hope you enjoyed it.
Yep, hope you had a good time. That's what it's all about.
No, thank both of you. Appreciate it.
All right, well, so from the entire STL Tech Talk crew, thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Daniel.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And let's see. All right, so how do we follow that up? I'm not really sure. Let's go ahead and hop right into the news because I know we're kind of crunched for time here. Let's see. Let me roll down. Kevin, you're up with your first story.
Yeah, well, we touched on it a little bit at the beginning. We were talking with Daniel about the Windows 10 tech preview. I've tried it out on a Lenovo computer, and it just wasn't really running as well. And like I mentioned earlier, I think it was probably because I didn't do a clean install. So I do have like a 64 gig partition on this computer. Then I'm going to throw it on and really give it another whirl. So I'm looking forward to trying that out because just what little that I did try, I did like how you're resizing the start screen and snapping different windows. It was nice. But I can see it being confusing again for people that had jumped from Windows 7 to Windows 8, 8.1. That was a whole new learning curve for people. And now it's like going back and merging the two together. I think it's going to be kind of another learning curve, but I think it's definitely a step in the right direction.
I wholeheartedly agree. I'm not going to rush our news stories this week. I just wanted to kind of touch on a couple of quick things that weren't covered. So yes, the Windows 10 technical preview is out. People have experienced some issues loading it up. My thing is, unless you really want to be legitimately be a part of their preview program, give them feedback, and you have a device that you can dedicate just to this operating system, do that. If not, don't, because then you're just going to complain and be a part of the problem, not a part of the solution. Not that, Kevin, you did that. I'm just saying that you had a device, you tried it out, and you were, one of those individuals.
I had only given it like 24 hours. I'm like, I can't have this laptop not be running smooth. So I've went ahead and I've got to reset back up so I can actually give it a true proper experience, and I can, dual boot, and it's just a matter of now of getting back to reinstalling that on that separate partition. So I'm looking forward to it because I liked it before, but I just can't put it on a Surface Pro 3 because, like Daniel said, Continuum's experience is not there, so it's kind of not really ready for the Surface Pros because I'm not going to get rid of my type cover and because I want to use it as a tablet at times, and until I can do that seamless and get that full experience, I'm like, yeah, I'm not ready to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would put it on my Venue Pro, but I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, I couldn't install it on my Venue Pro 8. For some reason,
is there limitations or something? I mean, maybe I haven't looked into that.
I know there's some different hardware restrictions that you're kind of limited to. Older computers, you may or may not be able to install it on.
Okay.
Definitely like a Surface RT. No, you're not going to be able to.
No, that's not. No, don't even try. I mean, don't even try.
No,
so something
it won't install.
Yeah, right. So something talking about things that are in preview right now. Sway, over at Mary Jo Foley, our very first guest for this show, has an awesome article plus a YouTube link to something called Sway. Let me pop that back up here. So what's awesome about Sway was it's not okay. So it's not a presentation per se application like PowerPoint, but it is it's a new part of the Office suite family. Okay, so what I want to inform you guys on, is that this application can be used for really interesting and fun. It's like you're creating this experience with a social network, with a embed videos, embed cool transitions, and it's very artistic. It's very kind of un-Microsoft, more like Apple, and its functionality and the way that it looks. It's very visually appealing. So I suggest everybody go over there and check this out because I am going to be checking this out and coming up with maybe new ways to do this. It seems as though tailored experiences, and you can even do like a whole website with this thing. So it's really cool. Go over and check it out. I think you guys are going to like it a lot. It's a really neat addition to the Windows Office suite that currently family. And also, I wanted to quickly touch on there are 50 new partners for Windows because of Windows dropping the licensing fee. There is Flipboard, which is now on Windows Phone. It doesn't exactly work totally awesome, but whatever, it works. There's the Swarm app on Windows Phone, so that's enormous strides in the latest updates. So there's that. Sensor Core, awesome. All these things I wanted to tell you guys about who may be on the fence about getting a Windows Phone. You should. Because it is an awesome operating system. It's also an awesome experience, and they don't pay me to say that. I say that because I use this stuff every day. So, Kevin, you're up with your next part.
No, it's pretty much when you think Windows Phone is the best mobile operating system nobody's using.
Yes.
As they like to say.
It's a good way to say it.
I mean, there's still some ways to go with the integration, like Daniel was saying. Myself personally, whenever I open an email and I click on a link, and for example, if it's a LinkedIn or if it's a WPCentral, I want that link to open not in the browser. I want that link to open within the LinkedIn app that's installed as well.
Ooh.
Because, like he was saying, we want these apps to be talking with each other, and currently, right now, they don't.
Right.
So that's kind of like a big limitation, and one of my biggest complaints that in the Mail app needs room or needs some work. Sometimes trying to read certain emails, you can't zoom in, zoom out. Even on a 1520, you would think, oh yeah, but no, you still can't see the entire email text within that window. It's like, why? I don't get that. So.
Right. Now, you've had some time on the Android side spinning with this Samsung Alpha. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this Galaxy Alpha, I don't have it near me at the moment. It's actually charging because I've just been letting it run down.
Okay.
It's very interesting. It's a snappy little device. Got some pretty good specifications. I don't really know them off the top of my head. But it's smaller than your typical Galaxy S5, and it has a different build, different form factor, which a lot of people are comparing to the iPhone 5S per se, because it has, that kind of like a nice metal band around it. It's extremely light. The back of the device has that kind of like soft rubberized feel to the back removable battery cover. Like I said, it's really light. Battery life on it is not superb because they went with a pretty small battery. I believe it's less than 2,000 milliamp hours. So, but I've been able to get a full day use out of it, just messing around with it. And I do again, whenever I go back and use an Android device, the apps talk with each other, and I like that. That's one reason why it makes me really miss it on Windows Phone even more, because I know what I'm missing.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree. So look, the whole point of the alpha was to kind of compete aesthetically with the iPhone,
yeah,
and the MA and the HTC One variants.
yeah, Samsung's just got this whole corporate strategy, I guess, of they'll just throw out devices, even if they only sell
Like dealing cards.
10, yes, even if these models only sell 10,000, like the Galaxy Note Edge that's coming out with a kind of like curved right edge that you get just a few more.
Is that weird
pixels.
to you? It's weird to me.
It is, because when you're holding the device, typically your fingers are on one side of the device and your thumb's on one side of the device, and with Samsung devices, all the buttons are on one side or the other, sometimes both. I don't know. So whenever we get a chance to try out the Note Edge, definitely gonna try, because you got to you got to take it for a spin and see what it is. But Samsung's really big on these niche devices. It's like, just to say they did, I'm like, I don't know why they do that, but I guess they feel if they can sell 10,000 or 15,000 of one model, then great. But I think it's money best spent elsewhere.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think the internals of the Alpha aren't very appealing either. I mean, and of the Edge, both of those devices I kind of expected more out of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Note Edge is pretty much the Galaxy or the Galaxy Note 4, just with a different style display. Otherwise, it's really the same device. A couple little differences, but pretty similar experience.
Yeah. Let's see. What was my next question going to be? Oh, what's the camera like on the Alpha? I wanted to ask that question real quick.
I haven't really taken a whole lot of pictures with it yet, because I just haven't really been out too much lately. But I am planning on doing some side by sides and really trying it out, because Samsung's known for having really good cameras. So I do want to test it out, because I believe it is still a 13 meg shooter, which is going to have similar hardware to what you do find in the Galaxy S5.
Interesting. So would you suggest the S5 or the Galaxy?
Either the Galaxy S5 or the Alpha. I would just go ahead and get the Galaxy S5. The software, is the same. You're going to get, the S Health and a lot of the other Galaxy specific software things that you can expect within TouchWiz. You're going to get on the Alpha and the Galaxy 5. So, just depending on really what your budget is, and if you can handle a slightly smaller device. I mean, if you don't like big phones, then the Galaxy Alpha would be a great device for you. But just keep in mind, you might want to, if you're a heavy user, you're going to want to keep a charger handy or a spare battery.
Right. So my last story, and then we'll go to our app picks, is about Android L and running on 64-bit, devices. Over the next couple of months, there are going to be a lot of cell phones. That's what I'm going to call them, smartphones, whatever. Oh God, somebody's going to give me crap for saying cell phones. I can see it already. There's a lot of devices that are going to be coming out, particularly smartphones that are going to be running either the 32 or what we know now is the Qualcomm chipset, because there's no 64 bits that are like ready to go. Jerry Hilton-Brand and Android Central did a really good job on their last podcast of explaining this fact of we have the next Nexus device coming, or Google has the next Nexus device, say that a million times fast, device coming out, and it is not going to have the internals so we know so far is not going to have the internals for what Android envisions as their future with the 64-bit. HTC has one, but I don't think that's in the States. And my concern is that Android's PR issue with fragmentation, which is kind of an overloaded term, and we've talked about that before with Phil, and they've talked about it a ton. And my concern is that it's going to be another one of those scenarios, kind of what Microsoft was fighting against, which was this, issue from Windows 7, 7.5, 7.8-ish, or whatever, switching the kernels, the internals, over to the NT and getting everything on the same, communicating on the same page. That's a concern. I believe that if you have your current device and you're happy with it, don't go anywhere, at least for the next couple of months. I know it's going to be hard because the holiday shopping season is going to be coming around. The Moto X is out, the new Moto X, not the older one, and the some other devices are going to be coming out. I would say hang on to what you got, unless you can one of those individuals who can afford, and a super tech geek who can afford to kind of swap out devices. What do you have to say about that, Kevin?
Yeah, I would kind of say very similar. Personally though, for myself, I'm looking for a new Android device just because I've been using the 1520 for the last probably 3 months now, just straight. It's been my daily driver, and I do love it. But after playing around with the new Galaxy Alpha and the LG G3 and stuff, I'm ready to get a new personal Android device. So I'm kind of looking to see what is out there, and battery life is important to me because the 1520 can get me well into the next day.
My Nexus, it's a gorgeous device, runs very well. I like wearing the G Watch with it, but good Lord, the battery life in that thing is horrendous.
Yes. And that's huge, So, during the last Android Central podcast, I was watching live and I asked a question, and Phil and Alex, they answered. And
was that you?
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, that's crazy.
I know. So, and Alex says, well,
world.
You would want the Sony Xperia Z3.
Right.
So, that's not really a phone that was kind of on my radar, but now it is, just because based on this experience, who better to ask than the people that get every single phone?
I know.
Than the ones that we don't really get a chance to get a hold of. Yeah,
and I do trust Alex's opinion on that because I feel like he really puts those phones through their paces.
And he didn't hesitate.
No, he did. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and answer the gentleman's question. Sony Xperia Z3.
Yeah, boom, done. Yeah, and he'd only had it for what, like a couple of days? I want to say not for too terribly long.
Yeah, he's probably had it a week or so.
Yeah, but that's not crazy long to just say right off the bat, boom, this is it. Here you go.
This is it.
Done. My concerns with Sony are its longevity, right? Because the next device you get, I'm talking to you, Kevin. The next device you get, you're going to want it to last a couple of generations. That's my concern with Sony hardware.
Yeah,
and software.
My top-end Android device right now is still my old Nexus 4 that I've had for it'll be 3 years this February. Right. It may get Android L, but I don't know what the experience is going to be like on it.
Right, it's probably not going to be awesome. That's for sure.
Right.
So yeah, that's going to be. It's going to be pretty interesting, to say the least. So, for the sake of time, which I hate when podcasters say that, so I apologize for saying that because I'm going to punch myself. Application picks of the week.
Yes.
Asphalt Overdrive. It's free on iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. Yes. Everybody should go check it out. It is there was something I was going to say. Oh crap, I forgot during the show. there's just not enough time, and I swear, Daniel, I forgot to say that he's like a vegetarian. That's awesome. He works out. He takes care of himself. It's all gorgeous stuff, and he's just a great human being, I'm telling you. He probably doesn't listen this far into the show, but if he did, we love you, man. Big heart. The other thing was in-app purchases. There was a recent study done, and Windows Phone Central did a good job of talking about it. In-app purchases for applications are the highest grossing apps on the market. I don't know how I feel about that. I think I understand that, but it's kind of like drugs, right? It's like you hook them in, just a little bit, and then they're jonesing.
Candy Crush Saga, man. Get your fix.
Get your fix, yo. You're not gonna go very far. You're gonna be sitting there. You're gonna be bored for those couple of seconds. You're gonna want to knock something out, and you're not gonna be able to.
Yeah, you can't play for 10 minutes.
Sarah, my wife, recently came up to me. She's like, "Yo, I gotta buy Plants vs Zombies too. I killed the first one. I need to tell you, son of a god."
Which is a great game, by the way.
My application pick, Kevin. You're up with your application pick.
Yeah, so mine is more of a social app. So it's Push Up Social. If you're an iOS or Android user, you can download this free app now. And what Push Up Social is it's a community that you can add to your website, and then it becomes a whole social experience. So using this Push Up Social app on iOS and Android, which is free, and it's coming soon for Windows Phone. There's currently a beta that I'm still in the talks with the creators to get my hands on. And what the app does is it allows you to interact with all the sites that you are part of their Push-Up Social community. So, here in St. Louis, we've got our STLTechTalk.com. We have a Push-Up Social community there. CIC St. Louis has one. Techly has one. Lab 1500. I mean, you'd be surprised,
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say, please don't start going down the list, because then I'll start having to add some. There was one that I didn't expect. It was like Capital Innovators. They have it on there.
Yeah, whenever you look through the app at all the different communities, you're like, wow, there's a lot of sites that really have this on there. And WinFan, I think it's winfan.net.
Yeah. The WinFan.
They've got it installed on their website as well, so you can interact with that community as well.
It's awesome. It's awesome. So if you want to comment or contribute to any stories that we cover here on the show, email us at contact@thetechinformist.com. Again, that's contact@thetechinformist.com. Again, special thank you goes out to our guest, Daniel Rubino. If there wasn't 600 miles and I wasn't already in a relationship, I would try to hook up with you and make it work long distance. I'm just kidding. We care for you a whole lot here on the show, as well as a community. So thank you so much for being on and doing everything that you do. He's a huge Rise Against fan, so that's also awesome. So we thank you, sir. Kevin, is there anything you want to add to the end of the wonderful episode that we've just done?
Yeah, other than thanking Dan for his time and even going overtime, we do appreciate that tremendously.
We need to be a little bit more honest with our guests, Kevin, and say, you know what, we're just going to have you on for an hour, not 30 to 40 minutes.
All right. But no, we appreciate. I mean, we just wrapped up our first month. In September, we had 5 episodes, and it was an awesome month. People apparently are digging this show, so we appreciate it. If you have any guest suggestions that you would like to hear, hit us up.
Yeah.
Contact at thetechinformist.com, and we would love to get on the guests that you guys want to hear. And topic suggestions. We would love to do that for you, because our show is your show. So
it's true. Mi casa su casa. Yeah.
Exactly.
So thank you we love and thank you to our fans. And so from the entire the Tech Informist crew, consider yourself informed. We're out.